Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to make the first weapon for our full suit Gundam cosplay. I'm going to make the quintessential Gundam Beam Saber, which realistically is pretty much a lightsaber. I have the scale of the Beam Saber hilt from the backpack that I had made a few months ago. First thing I do is look at the PVC pipes that I have for one that's very close to the correct size. I need to make 3 copies of the hilt. One will be made with a glowing beam that Joe can hold, and 2 more lightweight versions that can attach to the Gundam's backpack. I need a small piece of aluminum as the blade emitter. I want a solid connection for the polycarbonate blade that I'm going to use. For the widest part, the crossguard I guess, I can use a coupler for 1.5 inch PVC with a reducing adapter for 1.25 inch PVC. The coupler is the perfect size, and the adapter fits inside the coupler. And a 1.25 inch PVC fits inside the adapter. It's all made to do that. The 1 inch PVC pipe that I want to use for the hilt fits inside the 1.25 inch PVC. It's kind of loose, but that'll be all right. Okay. But I need to cut them all down to the right size. So I ended up cutting a lot of pipe. Did all this with the chop saw, and in fact, most of this stuff we don't need. All I really need is these bits. I've got, I've actually got rid of one part. I didn't need that one. Have 2 adapter rings, which I cut down. These would adapt from the 1.5 inch PVC pipe down to 1.25 inch PVC pipe. And these I'm gonna fit inside of the 1.5 inch coupler. And then I have a piece of 1.25 inch pipe that'll fit in between it. That will fit over the handle. And this will become the top of the blade. And then for the actual beam emitter, I have a piece of aluminum with 1 inch interior diameter, and I'll need to put that inside here. And I think I'm gonna start there. The 1 inch inside diameter aluminum pipe almost fits inside the 1 inch PVC. If I heat the end of the PVC, it'll soften up enough that I can cram the aluminum pipe into the PVC pipe, and then smack it with a hammer for an exact fit. The end of the plastic pipe is not square, but that's easily fixed. Heat it up again and use another pipe to press the edges back to square, which worked really well. So like I was saying, a beam saber is pretty much a lightsaber. And luckily, I've made a lightsaber before. I made one for the Beyond Geek channel. Actually, I've made a couple, and I got to keep this one, at least for the time being. So I'm gonna be doing much the same thing. The Beam Saber is going to be, yeah, by the way, I'm badass. I can hold a lightsaber by the blade. So I'm gonna be making the hilt for the most part, and then probably reusing either this blade or another spare blade that I have, which is just a polycarbonate tube. So this would end up slipping in, okay. The polycarbonate blade is held in place with a couple of set screws, but for now I can use this blade for testing. So I'll need to put 1 or 2 set screws to hold the blade in place, probably 2. Because I pressed the aluminum piece into the end, the 1.25 inch pipe is now too small. That's kind of what I was hoping would happen. I use a sanding drum to open up the inside just enough that the 1.25 inch pipe will now fit over the modified 1 inch pipe. I'll match this together much better when I'm ready to glue them. I'm just checking stuff right now. When these are met up, I'll get a really good panel line. I'll need to make a cap that goes on both ends. And before I get too much further with all that detail stuff, before I'm too committed on that, I need to make sure I've got the rivet holes that go around the emitter switch. Because if I screw that up, I'm gonna need a whole new piece of pipe anyway. I draw out where I want the emitter switch. This may not actually be a switch, but it sure does look like one on the model. This is the size of the model. It's just over 22 millimeters long, and that looks a lot like a switch to me. I plot out where the holes will go, and then drill them with a 3mm drill bit. I don't drill all the way through, I'm just making marks. This is done by hand, so it's not perfect, but it's gonna be fine. I just need to put the little switch plate in, and that is just a piece of styrene. I cut 2 little pieces. One is thicker, both of which were heated and curved to match the pipe. I start gluing the cross guard together, which is just like gluing a sprinkler system together because it's all the same pipes and it's the same glue. But I also glue thin sheets of styrene to the ends to hide some of the seams, and I'll cut the centers out when the glue sets. There is a skinny portion to the hilt near the pommel.
I heat up some thin-walled 3/4 inch PVC pipe and then force it inside of the 1-inch PVC. This ended up being the easiest way to fit these pipes together. Then I heat up the other end and make it fit as well. So the base needs to be tapered. I'm going to follow the instructions and everything else. And literally that's the only part, let's actually inset a little bit. That's the only part I haven't really figured out. I decided to heat up more thin pipe to make it fit. Hot. I used some scrap to draw a line around the end as a place to start sanding from. And then I sanded the edge of the thicker PVC pipe to make it have an angle. Cut this off and glue it all back together again. And then this piece just gets glued in here. Yes, along with this to hold it in place. And then I have a place for the power switch. Once I get it built, I still got to put electronics in it. Then I have a place to put the power switch and the charging cable. It's been long enough, the glue is now set, and I can open up the crossguard and glue it in place over the bump near the emitter. Now I can glue the switch pieces on and clean the excess glue off the sides. This is the bottom piece that I had previously just ground down. What happened was I just cut it off with a little hand saw, and I ended up making a plug. There it goes. Good, you still fit. On the very end, I have a micro USB port. This is running a very small recharge circuit that will charge the lithium-ion battery that I plan on slipping inside to power the whole Saber. Yeah, there we are. Charging. Okay, so red is charging, and when the battery's done, it'll turn blue, or it'll just be blue when there's no load. And then underneath this, I'm gonna have the on-off switch, because all this really is a fancy flashlight. It's a stunt saber. I'm not going to be adding any kind of sounds. It's not going to have flash on clash. It's not going to have any kind of startup sounds. It's simply going to light up and it's going to turn off, and that's it. It is a stunt saber, for lack of a better term. This whole bit will end up just kind of going in there, and that is the basic shape. I need these bits of glue to dry, and then I can start putting the electronics into it. So this is the exact same circuit that I've used with the Beyond Geek lightsabers, or at least one of them. This is using the Blade Builder's circuit board and speaker in order to make everything work. This power is the same as an 18650 battery, so I've got 3.7 volts coming in. And then I've got a substitute blade here, because this is all just kind of testing, but that's pretty much all I'm after. Now, one problem with this particular setup, aside from a toy speaker, is that it makes lightsaber sounds, and beam sabers don't make lightsaber sounds. So I'm probably not going to be able to use the toy, but I can use the same circuit idea to make the right circuit for a beam saber. So I've been playing with electronics for a couple of hours. I've taken all the toy parts off, and I've got 2 testing circuits here. This section is what I actually want to use. This section was to make sure I could adjust the blue to what I wanted. What does that mean? A beam saber is actually a magenta blade. Lightsabers are blue and red, right? Mostly. So in order to get magenta, I need to adjust the level of the red light and the level of the blue light to make the mix and get a proper magenta. We looked it up using Photoshop, and the RGB value, red, green, blue, it's 100% red, 50% blue, 0% green. Green's easy, you don't hook it up. I have an RGB LED, green's not plugged in. I have a variable resistor down here at the base, and this is another style. This will change the luminance value of the blue. It's not going to change the color, it's just how bright it's going to be. If I have it at 50% brightness, that's about the color magenta that Joe wants. To test it, I've got another light over here. It's just a blue LED. It also has a lens on it, and that's my 50% power blue. I have this switch, that's 100% power. So I'm pretty confident that I've managed to hook that up right. So if I look at the RGB LED, now what's fun about this is there's separate LEDs. I can see the individual colors. What we need is a diffuser, which is what the blade is for this saber that I made for Geek. Now this is a blue blade, but the only part that's blue is the LED in the handle. If I take a little piece of aluminum, blocking the LED from our view, and then set the diffusing blade over it, and I can get pretty much the color that I want. I'm pretty happy with that. That looks pretty good. So I think this is what we're gonna go for. I don't need the switch, I can take a couple parts out, and this is what has to go inside of the Beam Saber handle. These bright LEDs get very hot, and I can use a bolt for a heat sink. But first, I grind the top of the bolt flat and use some LED heat transfer tape to stick the LED itself to the bolt. This makes an acceptable heat sink. I solder the two LED driver pucks to the red and blue LEDs. These pucks help condition the power to keep the LEDs bright even as the battery is wearing out. Then I superglue a narrow focus spot lens on top of the LEDs. This little lens focuses the light into a very tight spotlight, which will light up the blade better. I add the variable resistor to the blue LED. You can see the clear shrink tube that I've also put over the LED. That just keeps the wires neat and isolated from the aluminum tube. And then I add a J connector to the power leads. Now this gives me three parts: the LEDs, the power switch with recharge unit, and a battery. And I have all the wires shrink tubed around the battery as well. The J connectors will just make it easy to replace the battery when it wears out. There we are, and oh good, it's blue. There's no blue. I figured out the variable resistor got changed along the way. I just reset it and everything was fine. I drill out two holes through the plastic and into the aluminum, and then tap them for 832 set screws. The set screw will hold the blade in place, and I'll also add some on the sides so I can attach the pommel. I plug the battery into the pommel and feed everything into the hilt. There's just enough room for everything to fit. The set screws are tiny Allen head screws that can fit all the way into the pipes, holding them together. Add a couple of set screws to the blade and it's ready for paint. Yeah, there we go. Okay, well still, this isn't quite finished. We have something extra we wanted to add to it, and Joe wants to actually start painting the blade, so I'm gonna let him do that, and I need to make a couple of foam ones to put onto the backpack. Okay, that's the wrong, still. I need two more lightweight versions to complete the backpack. I cut cardboard tubes to size instead of PVC pipe, but I still need small pieces of pipe as connectors for the cardboard, and I make emitters from thin-walled PVC pipe. I glue the PVC to the cardboard with Gorilla Glue. Water helps the glue foam and expand. I cut some 2mm HD foam to wrap the cardboard tubes. They need to have the same look and texture as the rest of the Gundam. I trim the foam that I don't need after it's all glued on, and 10mm HD foam is perfect for making the cross guards, and to make the slope panel for the pommel. I plug the end with another disc of 10mm foam, then glue the pommel onto the hilt. I mark the placement of the activation switch. Then I use a wood burner to add the rivet holes. Finally, adding the switch pieces and the detail plate on the hilt. Everything is ready for paint. I cover the foam hilts with 3 coats of white Plastidip and use primer on the PVC hilt. Wooden dowels makes it easy to hold these while they're being painted. Everything gets coated with a gloss white spray paint, and then I can add panel lines on all the hilts, including the rivet holes. After the panel lining got finished, we added some custom-made water slide decals. These are actually all over the Gundam costume. We needed a few more for the Beam Saber hilts. And the reason why I made 2 lightweight foam Beam Saber hilts is because these need to go in the backpack. Now, I can't just set these in because they're not going to stay in the right positions. So what I ended up doing was cutting out a foam block. This is the same kneeling pad that we used to stack up to make the feet. I've got 2 of them here. But the hole that I have drilled here to hold the blade isn't perfectly straight up and down. I didn't drill it through like this. It's drilled on a 15-degree angle. That way, when something goes in, it's actually gonna hold the correct angle that it needs to be for the proper silhouette of the Gundam. So these just fit inside, and what's neat is at the moment, I don't think we're gonna need to glue them in. And then I cut off some wooden dowel. This is the same wooden dowel that I actually slipped the Beam Saber over when I painted it. But that just goes on, and this fits right into that 15-degree hole. And there we are. We have Beam Sabers on the backpack, so the profile, the silhouette of the backpack is finally complete. This started a few videos a few months ago, and this was the piece missing to make it a Gundam backpack, and it's finally finished. But there's another one
that has electronics in it. This is actually going to need a blade. The blades that I made for the lightsabers are all basically the same. It's a 1-inch polycarbonate tube with a hemispherical bit of acrylic on the end. And on the back side of the acrylic here, there's a small circle of aluminum heater tape to act like a mirror to help make the end light up a little more. But the inside core has some cellophane. The cellophane is just clear cellophane, but because there's so many layers, it ends up being translucent and not just the pure clear that it is when it's a single layer. So that is all that's inside the blade to make the core of the lightsaber. So when you put all that together, you get a really good effect. But this still isn't the only thing that Joe wanted to do. I'm totally happy with this. This is all I expected to do. Joe wanted to take it a little further, and he made a little Beam Saber effect. And what this does is it's supposed to fit at the very base of the blade so that when it slips on, you get the Starburst Beam Saber effect, which I have to admit looks really cool. This is something I'd never considered doing because you would never put this part on a combat ready lightsaber. These small little pieces are gonna break, are gonna cause problems. This is a bad idea for a combat ready lightsaber. But for a cosplay ready lightsaber, this looks fantastic. But I have a blade specifically for this that is actually the very first polycarbonate tube blade that I made. And Joe painted it. He airbrushed the entire blade with this magenta pink color because he really wanted it to look like Gunpla even when it wasn't turned on. And then in addition to the blade, he also airbrushed the starburst effect at the bottom. We actually have a couple of spares expecting the tips to break off. And once everything was airbrushed and finished, it was sealed with a clear coat top coat. Painting a blade is not gonna work for a combat ready lightsaber. You're just gonna take the paint off in a hurry. You're gonna mark it up and take the paint off and be disappointed. But we're not making a combat ready one, so it's okay. I've got a piece of cellophane that's almost long enough. So I turned it a little bit diagonal and then rolled it up on a wooden dowel, which lets me insert it inside of the 1-inch polycarbonate tube. And then you unroll the dowel, which makes the cellophane open up, and you get your finished blade. Then, yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Oh, that works out really well. The diffusion inside really helps get the core look, and it helps to lighten the whole blade up. You can see it's still a little dim out here, but it's brighter than it was. So let's put this together with the Gundam suit. Most of the materials I used are available for order and have shipped right to you. I put a list and some links in the description. Now I know that I've talked a lot this episode about lightsabers and about beam sabers, so we'll keep this really short. I know there's lots of different ways that you can build a beam saber, but this is how Odin makes. So the shop's kind of a mess. I don't know how well you can tell. It's all right. I've got one multiple. I want to thank Legendary Link, Paul White, and all of my Patreon supporters. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.